welcome to the Giraffe Social Media Podcast. It's what social media managers are talking about. I'm Ellie, and today I'm joined by Chloe and Katie.
Hello.
Hi.
Coming up on this week's episode, we'll be discussing our favourite social media marketing tools, why you should market your content marketing, and Twitter is testing a new articles option. So stick around to the end of the show, where we'll be answering some of your burning DMs. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of this week's episode, I thought it would be really interesting to discuss our favourite social media marketing tools. Obviously, we use them all the time, day in, day out, and like for personal use as well. So it can be anything from content creation to inspiration tools. So I'm going to throw it straight over to you guys. Chloe, do you want to kick us off?
I have two. One probably very well known in the marketing community, and then the other one I only recently stumbled across, so I don't know how many other people already knew about this and how late to the party I am. The first is Facebook Ads Library. This is, of course, something that is like so well known, and it just kind of allows you to have a little snoop on your competitors' ads, see what type of creatives they're putting out there, the type of copy they're doing. You can also kind of have a look into what if they're doing any sort of A/B testing, and I just find it a really valuable resource, not only to do a bit of competitor analysis, but also if you're stuck on maybe some inspiration, if you're working with a client who fits a certain niche and you're not really sure or familiar with them and kind of want to have a look at what other people are doing, that's really great. And along in a similar vein, my second favorite sort of tool is a website called Creative Market. And it's not so much a tool as it is a marketplace, as the name would suggest, where freelancers and independent sellers basically sell their designs and social media templates, little graphics, fonts, whatever, basically. And again, this is really useful for sourcing a little bit of inspiration, whether it's kind of changing up existing content, or again, if you're starting with a new client and you know, they don't really have any sort of existing branding or presence on social media and they want you to completely, you know, take creative will. It's a great place to kind of start and build the foundations and understand what you like stylistically. So those are my two recommendations, Facebook Ads Library and Creative Market.
I love that. I've never heard of Creative Market before. So I'm going to do a proper in-depth research into this after this episode. So, gosh, this is news to me. I'm very excited.
Highly recommend.
So, look at this. I'm making my little notes as you're discussing it. I was like, oh, what is this? What about you, Katie?
So, one of the things that, I don't know, it's a bit of a weird one to recommend, but I personally really love using the Bulldog Social Media Holidays Content Marketing Calendar 2022, which is a very long title. But basically, it's just every single possible social media holiday that you may want to make a post about. It's UK based as well, so we've got quite a lot of UK clients, so it makes it, it's better than putting one out and then turns out it's like a different day for America. So that's one that I quite often use, especially if I'm running a little dry on ideas and I've got a month's worth of content to do. I'm like, what is there anything happening this month that I can make a quick easy post for? And then it turns out it's random acts of kindness day, and I'm like, brilliant, love that. So that's one of the things I use. And then in terms of actually making content, I really like using Mock Drop, which I don't know if you guys have heard of it. I feel like you might have.
Yeah. I love Mock Drop.
Yeah, it's especially if you're like me and you can be a little bit lazy sometimes when it comes to Photoshop and making stuff look real. But basically it's a database of it's free. We love free, but it's a database of screens. So you have you can have laptops, computer screens. I think they've got smart TVs on there, Apple Watches, phones. And then you just drag your image into it. So it'll be a screenshot of your website that you want to promote. Drag it onto there. It fits all nicely. It's all cut out and everything. You save it and it's amazing. And I personally love it.
You know what? you've both sold me already on both.
I can see
all of
you
your
taking
tools.
notes there
Yes.
behind the camera.
Honestly, well, I've never heard of creative markets, and I haven't heard of mock drop, so I'm learning something. So hopefully the listeners at home are also learning something as well.
Ooh.
Fingers crossed.
One more thing that I know will be of interest to you, Ellie, because you really want to get into like TikTok transitions. I personally use CapCut, which is is an app, and it's the secret to doing transitions, because apparently a lot of people don't actually do them on the app, on like TikTok itself. And there's just like loads of like really nice transitions for like any client you've got. There's like some animated ones, but then there's also some like fake camera movements. It's really cool and I like it.
I have to say I have used CapCut before, but yeah, it's a bit of a love-hate relationship. Sometimes it can work really well for me. Other times I'm like, oh, that doesn't look the way I want it to.
Yeah.
Yeah, either way, no, I'm happy. I've learned something today, so we're on for a win here. And for those of you listening, please let us know what your favourite social media marketing tools are as well. Moving on to our main segment of this week's episode, we are going to be discussing why you should market your content marketing. So firstly, for those of you listening that don't know what content marketing is, it's a strategic marketing approach focused on creating and distributing valuable, relevant, and consistent content to attract and retain a clearly defined audience and ultimately drive profitable customer action. So whether that's sign-ups or purchases, that sort of thing. And content marketing is one of the most oversaturated areas of marketing, with 84% of companies having a content marketing strategy implemented. So as a result, everywhere is cluttered with articles, videos, posts, and podcasts that most people have limited interest in. Therefore, creating content without a well-planned content marketing strategy will leave you with nothing but low-performing commodity content. Therefore, great content plays a critical role in moving customers along the path from awareness of your brand to purchase of a product or sign up to an email, that sort of thing. But it's only effective if you map it thoughtfully through the phases of the buying cycle and the personas of the customers that you want to reach. So this is called the content marketing lifecycle. So going off the content marketing lifecycle, we'll explain it further in depth about how this can work for you and your brand. So Katie, do you want to start us off?
One of the big things to do is to make sure you're planning, and part of your planning should really be down to your research. So, things like what platforms does my audience that I want to reach use? What keywords do they search? So that goes back to, our SEO optimization from last week. And also like a very valid thing to research is what are your competitors doing? Now, I'm not saying copy what they're doing. However, if you're starting completely from scratch, they may be succeeding in some ways that you could take inspiration from. Don't completely rip them off, but, sprinkle some of their ideas in with your own. And, it might yield some success for you. And then as well, creating a buyer persona as well is completely essential to any content marketing, because otherwise you just don't know who you're trying to sell to, and if you don't know who you're trying to reach, it kind of just goes in the wind, and
No, 100%. I mean, going off what you were just saying, it's not enough just to produce content. If there's no kind of intention behind it, there's no target audience behind it, then it's it's pointless, it's useless, and your strategy won't work. It's not enough.
Exactly. Yeah.
So planning is crucial. I 100% agree with you.
Yeah. And then as well, as part of that, you don't want to go into this completely without any idea of the content you want to do. So one of the main things that we recommend here is to, make content pillars that could then form your content outline. It's something that Chloe taught me about a few months ago, and I swear by it. So like, it's probably best to use an example. So say, for example, you're a housing association, right? And you're wanting to create content. So one of your pillars you could choose is promotion. And for that, you could use like images of the buildings and copy that focuses on sales. And then also another pillar could be lifestyle, and that's internal images of the building and showing off your interior design, all of that nice stuff that kind of makes the audience like feel like, that's their home, right? And then as well, one of the things that you can do is education posts, which, if you're this housing association, you can do information for first-time buyers, jargon busters, and even like interior design tips. So it doesn't have to all be serious, but like loosely related. And then finally, one that a lot of brands really love to use is entertainment. And for a lot of people, this can be like such a key pillar because it creates that relatability, the authenticity. And that can be done through like GIFs, memes, pop culture references, like trivia even, and like mini games, that sort of thing. So that's just a really good way to make sure that your content is outlined in a really like strong way. And then, you know, you're not going into that completely blind.
Yeah, I guess the next step to go from there is to actually like produce your content and make sure that you're optimizing it. But, you know, we've done a lot of episodes around this, so we're going to skip that today. And I'm going to talk a little bit about promoting that content, which is all about knowing when and how and where to publish that content once it's been produced. So when it comes to analyzing the best channels for content marketing, there are like an infinite number of ways to send your content to potential customers, but I'd say there are probably only a few that are worth your time when it comes down to it. And those are email marketing, blogs, creating blog posts, and of course the classic social media platforms. And you can either repurpose your content across each. This is a really smart way of working. And, you know, if you're a small business owner or a single social media manager working on an account, this is a really great way to kind of optimize your time and still, you know, create content for multiple different platforms. But you can also target separate markets or demographics and niches on each platform as well. So, you know, maybe you're targeting your older market through your email, because this is a generalization, but I imagine, you know, most of your older demographics are still using email, and then you might target your younger demographic on social media, or perhaps you'll, you know, going back to your content pillars, Katie, you might post your aspirational lifestyle stuff on social media, and then create that educational, valuable content through blog posts, and then that promotional content through your email marketing. So there are lots of different ways that you can split it up, but I would say focusing across those three platforms is kind of your best bet. And then we move into knowing when and where to publish that content. So no matter how great your content is or which network you're posting across, if you're not sending it out at the right time, you're probably going to struggle getting those insights up and that engagement up. So it's really important to be selective about when you share, and then making sure that you've done that research to know when those optimal times are. So there are plenty of blogs out there. I know Pop Buzz and The Tab will give you the best times kind of based on the majority. So the best times to post on TikTok in the UK, for example. And that kind of just gives you, you know, the times that most people are active, whether that's like 6 p.m. or the 3 p.m. slump at work, or maybe before work for LinkedIn users. But if you want to get like really refined and kind of make it specific to your audience and making sure that you're optimizing these posting times for your audience, obviously using your insights on social media is going to be a really great go-to. But scheduling tools like Sprout Social, which we use here at Giraffe, or apps like Later app, they usually will have optimized posting times set within that scheduling platform. And that typically is kind of formatted based off your insights. So it shows you that in a really broad way if you have a lot of clients that you're working with and you don't want to jump back and forth between your Google Analytics and your Instagram insights and that type of thing. So yeah, those are really important ways to promote your content.
I mean, just going off that, I feel like the scheduling softwares, it definitely does all of like the hard work for you. So it's an absolute lifesaver, you know, for you personally, as well as, you know, ensuring that your content is going to do the best it possibly can, and reaching the most audiences. So I completely agree. You guys have made some great points there.
And like kind of going off what Chloe was saying about insights, like not only can they tell you the best time to post, but they can also tell you what content is doing well and what isn't doing quite so well. And you can measure that against your KPIs and objectives that maybe you established, well, you probably did establish it in the planning stage. So, you know, you have a baseline of where to compare your performance with, whether you are looking for engagement or like follower growth or like increase, you know, like some vanity metrics. Yeah, so you can use that to kind of work out what's doing well, what's not going quite as well, and go for there and Like, this isn't a one and done thing. You don't just do this once when, like, you've just first worked out your strategy, you've chucked out a load of posts and go, okay, this is how it is. Because, like, social media is always changing and what's trending is always changing. So you've got to keep an eye on your content and on the analytics of your contents, and you can kind of see, you can kind of start to see the warning signs that something that was once doing amazing and the type of content the audience once really loved, they're not engaging with quite so much anymore. So you can be more proactive than reactive with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, content marketing is based all around, the effective use of the right timing, and also ensuring, like you said, Katie, like you're keeping on top of the trends. So yeah, definitely, analysis of your content, or, your blog post, email marketing, how many people are opening your emails, or, the bounce rate, that sort of thing. It's definitely important to keep on top of that as a marketer.
I think if you're also kind of staying on top of analyzing that content and understanding how best to improve it, you're in turn going to help yourself in amplifying that content, which is is the last step in the content marketing lifestyle. That is understanding what content to amplify in order to optimize your return on investment. Because if you think about it, there are almost 3 million blog posts that are published every day, for example. So that is a lot of noise that you need to cut through. And even if you are creating the best content of your life, it doesn't mean that someone else out there, in another industry, agency, business is on top of their game as well and producing really important and educational content too. So I think the important thing to remember around content amplification strategy is it should be centered around an audience wants and needs, not what you think they want or need, right? So people don't always want to buy what you have to offer. So you need to make sure that you're understanding your buyer's key interests, their needs, and what stage of the buyer's journey they're in before you start marketing to them, which I think we've mostly covered through, talking you through all the stages of the content marketing life cycle. So if you're not really sure what content you should be amplifying, I think there are a few kind of flags that you need to check and see if the content that you are posting checks these boxes before you go ahead and promote them or put some money behind them. The first is to make sure that the buyer's journey is the number one priority. So any of your blog posts or your social media posts that kind of fall into the awareness stage, maybe the consideration stage or the decision stage, I think that's really important to consider, that the way that you're putting money behind things kind of follows that journey. Because, if you're popping out traffic ads that are kind of targeted for the action stage as opposed to the awareness stage, you can see how that becomes a bit disjointed, because naturally most of the people who are going to see that don't know your brand already. You're kind of trying to direct them to your website or to your social media page so that they can become introduced to your brand. So you don't automatically want to be throwing in CTAs that are like, buy this now, because they've never heard of you, right? So make sure that your content is aligning with that is, the most important way to kind of make sure that you're promoting the right things.
I mean, going off the back of that, I think it's really important to remember that, the content marketing life cycle is a life cycle, so it's continuous. So sometimes you may have to revert back to certain steps, and that's okay. No one set strategy will work for every single brand, and that's to be expected. So I think like we always say, trial and error, and finding a strategy that works for your brand. But I think we've covered some really great actionable points. So please do let us know if you found this this content useful, and whether you're going to implement it for your brand as well. Now it's time to dive into the top social media news story of the week. Now this one I'm quite excited for, guys. I came across it and I thought, okay, this is a bit different, a bit quirky. So I'll give an introduction to this. So Twitter is now testing a new, what they call articles option, which will potentially enable long form posts within the app. Now, what I find really controversial about this almost is that obviously Twitter is known to be short form content, restricted character usage. So they're kind of flipping what they know on its head, and going for that long form content. So a new tweet test was spotted at the beginning of this month, with the new option being called articles. So it appears to provide a means to create blog posts within the app, which will then be shareable in some form via a tweet. Probably. I'm just guessing at this point. Nothing's been set in stone. And a Twitter spokesperson has explained that we're always looking into new ways to help people start and engage in conversations on Twitter. We'll share more about our work here very soon. How vague.
I love how vague that is. It's
Yeah,
just like, it's almost as if they only had a certain amount of characters to do it.
Yeah, literally. But I think it'll be really interesting to kind of see how this develops and what it will actually entail, because it's very much like a guessing game of what it could be. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this.
I am not on Twitter, so I guess my response is pretty lackluster compared to someone who's like an avid user. But I have to say, I am having this sense of deja vu, because I almost feel like we've covered this story before, maybe like mid last year, and maybe they did try to do it then, but I know that they have this threads feature, right, which is where you can just continuously tweet in the same thread, appropriately named. So maybe that's what they replaced it with last year, or whenever. I'm thinking this feature was almost going to be introduced then. But yeah, I think it's cool. It reminds me of LinkedIn articles or LinkedIn blog posts, obviously, and those are super helpful for a lot of different brands and individuals, especially the old LinkedIn influencers. So yeah, I think this is really cool. And as someone who's not on the platform, I don't have much else to add. Katie?
As someone who is on the platform too much. No, I think it's a really interesting move by Twitter. I mean, I personally really like the way threads are laid out, and that's generally how I prefer reading like the longer form content on there. But like, so I can kind of see myself maybe using this, like, as you said, if it is potentially like released on a tweet, like on the main timeline. But like, if it's all kind of hidden in this one tab, I don't know if I can see myself like actively going to read it. Because like the only reason I read those like long threads is because they show up on my feed. They have like a really like gripping like headline, and I'm like, okay, I'll read that. So no, like I don't really know if I'll use it unless it's like integrated nicely into the feed. However, I did think about it and I think, this is quite a win for accessibility, because I know not everyone can read threads. Like, that's not the best way of reading stuff for them, and there are platforms out there that will condense a thread into basically like a twit longer, which is just like, we'll reduce it into just like basically paragraphs, which is a lot easier for some people to read. So it's good on that aspect. I'm still like kind of waiting to see what happens. I'm on Twitter for like the short form like content that occasionally delves into long form. The main thing for me though is that I look forward to YouTuber apologies, like not having to be like screenshots from the Notes app, like that actually have a good platform for it.
I was just going to say, I wonder if this will replace the classic screenshot, because I love that, and it fits across all your platforms. You can put it on Instagram, you can put it on stories, you can put it on YouTube, even you can also put it on Twitter. So the thought of that going, like, why would you stop doing that if you would just post it to all your platforms, And obviously, the only forms of longer tweets are not just YouTuber scandal apologies, but
but
it
it's
is
true.
the one that springs to mind. Yeah, that is a really good point, and I was just thinking that as you said it, Katie. So
no, it will be really interesting to kind of see what's actually materializes as, and whether it's going to be integrated within the main like Twitter feeds. But yeah, I guess tune back in a few months' time and see if this actually has happened or not. This week, we asked users on our Draft Social Media Instagram to ask us questions based upon this week's topic of content marketing. Therefore, our DM this week reads, what is good content marketing? And obviously, this is a great question for us to answer, considering we've just kind of gone through the content marketing life cycle. Based upon what we've previously said, obviously good content marketing provides value to your audience. So that links into good planning, good strategy behind your content marketing, not just creating content and then putting it out and hoping that somebody sees it type thing. And you want it to remain consistent to attract and retain a clearly defined audience. I feel like this is an obvious one, but if you're not regularly posting on social media, then you're handing your competitors an advantage, as obviously that's quite like an obvious form of content marketing, along with, like Chloe said previously, email marketing as well. And social media is an inexpensive and quick way to get your content seen. And the best question to ask yourself when creating content is, would you share it? And if the answer is no, then you need to go back to the drawing board and go back to stage 1 of the content marketing life cycle, which is planning. Do you guys have anything else you want to add?
Totally. I think something people forget is that good content marketing should always have like a mission statement behind it that kind of ladders up to your company's objective and to your goals. So it might not be a mission statement per se, but it might be your company values. So at Giraffe, we have like a handful of values like fun, passion, evolution, that sort of thing. And therefore our content pillars sort of reflect that in a way. We want to make sure that we're sharing content that helps passionate social media marketers increase their productivity and their marketing skills, that we're all about, evolution. So we, with this podcast, we try and update you guys on the latest trends and like industry news. And, a podcast in itself is a form of content marketing. So just making sure that you're kind of providing value to your audience that is a reflection of your own company values. I think that's quite a confusing meta way to say it, but I also think really good content marketing might not even feel like marketing at all. I think it is like valuable and engaging, and it doesn't make you think, oh brother, like this brand throwing like pushing sales down my throat again, that type of thing. So that's my 2 cents. I know there wasn't really any actionable tips in there, but to me that's kind of the encompasses of good content marketing.
I think the key basis that me and Chloe have both touched upon from that DM question is obviously just ensuring that you are providing value to your audience and not just going off what someone else has done, because like we said previously, what works for someone else may not work for you. So yeah. That was our top DM for this week. Hopefully we answered your burning question. If you'd like to be featured in next week's episode, then make sure you slide into our DMs on Instagram at GiraffeSM. Well, that's all we've got time for today. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, or follow us if you're listening on Spotify. We'd love to hear what you thought about today's episode, so make sure you reach out on social media and let us know what you thought. We've been Giraffe Social Media, you've been amazing, and we'll see you next time.